It is time for our annual spring visit with the man himself, Carson Arthur. And this is, I always consider this as a holiday for me because I do an intro and then I'm like, take it over, Carson.
And this time we're changing because I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So we're going to talk about pruning. So all the spots we're going to talk about this morning are about pruning because people get it wrong every time. So we're going to see how often you get it wrong, Tim.
I bet you. Well, 'cause I was looking, I did all my planting this weekend.
Okay.
I was planning to do it next weekend, but it's been so nice out.
fantastic.
We're safe to be doing planting right now.
100%
right?
good.
Okay.
Tomatoes can even grow in the go in the ground now. We're good.
And I was looking at the shrubs that they needed a little something, and I always kind of forget when we should be doing it.
All right.
Okay, what do you want to start?
So let's start with dead is dead. Okay? So a dead plant is never going to come back. All right? So dead is dead. This is dead.
Get rid of that because that's doing more damage. It's taking energy away from other parts of the plant.
It's not taking anything away because it's dead. It's just ugly and unsightly. It has no purpose anymore. If you've got a branch in your tree that's dead, get it out of there. It has no purpose. The only thing that this is going to do is it's going to naturally decompose, weaken the plant because fungus is going to get into here and bacteria and insects. Get it out of there.
Okay.
But how do you know when a plant is dead?
So there's green on it, so it means it's not dead.
But what about this part? As it just snapped off of my hand, it's usually a good sign.
It's dead.
Yeah, so here's the thing. People think things like hydrangeas. If they leave all the dead spent blooms on them, they're gonna come back. They're not, they're gone, they're done. But as you can see, there is new growth happening on this. So the way to check to see if a plant is alive is you're gonna do a bark scratch. Just scratch it with your thumbnail. If there's green underneath the bark like that, the plant is still alive. It is not dead. But if you go further up on the branch and you do the thumbnail scratch, there's no green there. That part is dead. That can be removed. No activity is going to happen on this.
Okay, so where would you remove it there?
I would
you take
take
that
it right
off?
back to the green growth, right to the green, where the green is good again, okay? What pruners do you use for dead and what pruners do you use for living wood?
Ooh.
Next question.
Well, this is a big baby. I would think this would be for living wood, something big like this.
And that's actually false.
Okay.
Okay, that's a lopper. That's for bigger wood. The key is the way your blades activate or cross the actual panel, so the anvil. So this is called an anvil pruner, where the blade actually stops on the base. This is used for dead wood. You never want to use an anvil pruner on living wood because it crushes the actual fibers. So this is bad. However, this little guy here is a bypass pruner. The blade bypasses the guard. When the blade bypasses the guard, it makes a much nicer and cleaner cut. This is what you use on living wood. This is for the green stuff. This is for the dead stuff. So the lopper in your hand, what does it do?
It stops.
But it
no, it goes back.
bypasses.
It bypasses, so this is for living.
Living wood, absolutely. So if you use the right pruner on the right wood and you're pruning the proper wood that you should be taking out of the trees and the bushes, that's going to help your plant significantly going forward.
Okay, take this one down.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Take a break. A few more examples with Carson Arthur getting you set for pruning, which is the next job, the next task you must be doing in your yard to get set. Make it looking pretty. I'm Morning Live. Okay, time to prune your evergreens. But how much to do, where to take it off, I don't know those answers. That's why we have Carson Arthur here to provide them for us.
And for all the gardeners out there who just saw him do that, that was not my fault. All right, let's set the record straight on evergreens. Here's how evergreens grow, and this is a perfect example. This is a pine. These sections where there's nothing on the branch are past years, all right? This section where there's needles is last year's growth. This little section right here is this year's growth. If you want to keep your pine tree under control size-wise, you would remove this called the candle. So you can trim that off and it'll keep the pine tree tighter. If you, however, cut below the growth down into this section down here, if you take that off, then the pine tree has no ability to replace it. So you cannot take off more than last year's growth at any one time. It gets very difficult for the tree.
Looking at this tree, how do we know where last year's growth is?
Well, and that's the key. When you're pruning a cedar tree, like what you just did, you did it properly in the sense that you just trimmed it off. But if you go too deep and you start getting into this dead wood down here, the tree doesn't have the ability to replace it because there's no chlorophyll happening in here. So if you get into your hedges and you start trimming them really deep, you can't basically bring them back. And people always wonder, oh, I've shaped it, but they went too deep and they wonder why it's all brown. That's why they've taken off all of the candles or any of the growth that would produce energy. So those shears are a great way to do it if you're on a small scale. But let's say you've got a huge hedge like this one and you need to prune, and if you're only pruning at the bottom and you can't get up to the top, what are you gonna do? That's where you start seeing hedge trimmers like this one from Craftsman. These hedge trimmers give you a lot more opportunity to shape it, to go right up. Let's see if I got any juice on this guy. Yeah, absolutely. So you can prune off all the candles, kind of like what you did, but because it's also a pole saw, you can extend it to clean up there.
You going bottom to top?
I do, and the reason why is people want to always create straight lines. Straight lines on evergreens like cedars are bad because the branches at the bottom now don't get as much sun. You need to leave these a little wider and a little tighter at the top. That's why it's important to get all the way up, because if the bottom's not getting any sunlight because the top is shading it, this will die off.
And just a little bit at a time, because that's the big thing that we do. We're taking too much off.
Absolutely, a little bit at a time, only the new growth. So when you're pruning your evergreens, you're gonna wait at least 2 more weeks, wait for those candles to come out, any of the new growth, then trim it to clean it up, and you're set.
Evergreens, 2 more left. What do we got?
We're gonna do maple trees, and we're gonna talk about flowering shrubs like hydrangeas and lilacs.
Awesome. Back with Carson Arthur on Morning Live. Lilacs in bloom, looking so beautiful right now. But what happens after they stop blooming? They're not as pretty. Back here with Carson Arthur to help us out with our lilac trees. I got one in my backyard. I was looking at it this weekend. It's kind of getting overdone. It needs to be trimmed, but I didn't trim it.
Good answer.
I held off because I knew we were going to talk about it. Okay, so
what was the first rule that I taught you? Dead is dead.
Dead is dead.
So look at this lilac tree. You can see where the new growth is. You can see what's alive, but you can also see what's clearly not alive. This is done.
Why is that dying?
Because this flower bloom was from last season. Lilacs take a full year to set a flower bloom, so you can actually remove all the spent flower blooms because they're not coming back because dead is dead.
Okay, reminder, show the what you're cutting with there
Yeah,
again.
so I'm cutting with pruners, secateurs. These ones are bypassed because I'm also doing some living pruning right now with the lilac, okay? The thing about most of these shrubs, lilacs and hydrangeas, it takes a full year for them to set the flower buds. If you prune this, you're likely to prune off any of the branches that are gonna produce flowers for you. This particular shrub was pruned last fall, and now it only has a few flowers, and it's just on the branches.
We took one off.
And it's just on the branches that weren't touched. So with your lilac, first rule of thumb is you do not prune it until after all the blooms are done. And then you only have a 3-week window to actually do any trimming. The other thing you want to remember is you can only take 1/3 of the tree down at a time. If you take more than 1/3 of these leafy greens down, it doesn't have enough ability to generate energy for next season.
So like there's a lot of bare patches in here. Is that because there's too much energy in that dead stuff? But you did say dead is dead.
Dead is dead. So the energy's not in the dead stuff. The problem is this wasn't pruned properly from the beginning. So because it got all leggy and like this, now it's going to be very hard to lower the crown back down to make it a manageable size shrub.
Can we save it?
Well, there's a couple of different options. People will say, oh gosh, don't lose a lilac. It's so beautiful. It supports pollinators, and that's true. But I'm not going to be able to fill this section. So what some people do is plant in front of it, so the next shrub comes up, it kind of visually gives you the distraction you're looking for. The other option is you can let some of these suckers that are coming out from the bottom grow up into filling in the tree.
Right, because these will continue to grow up.
They will.
Right?
They're
so
not.
Don't be touching any of these guys.
Well, you have to make that decision early. If you want a bushier shrub, let these go. If you don't want your shrub getting bigger and bigger and bigger, take them out.
These blooms last for how much longer? That's the only thing about a lilac. I love them, but once the bloom's gone,
done.
Yeah,
Last year they lasted about a week. This year, because the weather's going to be nicer, hopefully 3 weeks.
Okay, what's next? Last one?
Maple trees and what not to do.
Awesome. Back with Carson Arthur. All right, good morning. Welcome back. Last little visit with Carson Arthur. Always bringing some great gardening hacks, helping the backyard. The whole focus all morning long has been trimming. We've trimmed lilac trees. We've done, what did we do with the back? Oh, evergreens.
Yep.
Right? Now onto maples.
Well, or your hair. It's a 50-50.
Honestly, could you do a little bit of that? Because it is getting out of control.
All right, so everybody wants to know what they can prune at this time of year. Because I said, wait on your cedars, wait on your flowering shrubs, prune your deciduous trees like maples, oaks. All of those guys are good to prune at this time of year. Totally fine, because it doesn't cause any problems to the trees to remove crossing branches or any branches that are causing problems. And here's a perfect example. See this branch right here? This branch probably should have been removed when it was younger, because now it's rubbing in this spot right here, and it's causing a problem in the bark. This branch could have come off a long time ago. The key though is when you're removing the branch, you want to cut it as flush to the main trunk as possible. That way the tree will heal itself. And don't use any of those paints or coverings on it. The other thing that you want to do though is be very careful with your string trimmers. A lot of people are investing in good string trimmers this year, like this one from Craftsman.
What's it called?
A string trimmer.
String trimmer.
Okay. Yeah, as in we're going to string trim that off your head.
Wow.
The problem is,
You're
and
just
this
jealous
is,
you got nothing up there,
it's
that's
true. That's why I keep mentioning it. But see what happens down here. This is actually damage from a string trimmer. If you get too close to the trunk of your trees, you can actually scar the wood, and it causes this buckle to happen. This is from a string trimmer that cut below. So when you're using your string trimmers around your trees, make sure you either have the guard down or you give them enough space. If you give them enough space, you won't scar the wood and you won't cause problems like this. And this, in time, can actually kill off the tree. So you don't want that. Be very
you put
careful.
something on the tree?
No, at this point,
To guard that? You would need to do that in earlier days.
before you even started with your string trimmer, absolutely. At this point, the damage is done. So be smart when you're pruning your trees or cutting the grass around them.
Looking at this tree, this is the neighbor's tree, so we're not going to touch it. But
Yeah.
is there anything on this tree that could go?
Yeah, well, that branch for sure I would take off.
Not now though.
You could.
You could take that off?
Absolutely, you could take it off because it's going to cause more problems as it goes forward. Yeah, some of
okay.
the other branches that cross are problems as well because again, anytime the wind blows, it causes scabbing on the tree. Scabbing means open wounds. Open wounds are opportunities for fungus or insects to get in, and you don't want that.
Hey man, great seeing you.
Always.
Always a great visit in the spring. We'll look to see you again in the fall with some great tips. Happy gardening, everybody. Carson Arthur.